What makes some companies last for generations, while others disappear in a decade? Why do certain organizations seem immortal, carrying their purpose across time, while competitors fade into history? The answer Jim Collins and Jerry Porras tell us lies not in a single charismatic leader or a one-time breakthrough idea, but in something deeper, something built into the bones of the company itself. The book is called Built to Last, and it's a journey through what separates the merely successful from the truly visionary. Picture two mountains. On one stands a company that reaches a great peak, a dazzling product, a famous CEO, a short era of glory, then crumbles. On the other stands another company, slower to rise, maybe less glamorous, yet decade after decade, it keeps growing, evolving, and leading. The question is, what did the second mountain do differently? Collins and Porras spent 6 years studying 18 exceptional companies. They compared them to others in the same industries, companies that were good but not great. Hewlett-Packard versus Texas Instruments, Disney versus Columbia Pictures, Procter & Gamble versus Colgate. From thousands of pages of data, memos, and interviews, they discovered that the long-lasting ones were not built around one product or one person. They were built around a timeless core, what the authors call a core ideology. Core ideology is not about what you sell, it's about what you stand for. It's a mix of your purpose, why you exist, and your values, what you believe in. For Hewlett-Packard, it was not about printers or computers, it was about technical excellence and respect for the individual. For Disney, it was not about animation, it was about making people happy. This core became their compass through every storm and every decade. But these companies didn't cling to tradition. They held their core tightly and changed everything else. Collins called it, preserve the core, stimulate progress. The core gives meaning, progress gives growth. Together, they create a balance between identity and evolution, a living organism that adapts without losing its soul. Visionary companies don't chase trends. They create them. They don't wait for the next genius to lead. Build systems that outlast any single leader. Think of Walt Disney's death. Many thought the company would die with him. Instead, it grew stronger. Why? Because Disney had built a philosophy bigger than himself. Every film, park, and decision carried the same DNA: imagination, joy, family. Collins describes this as the clock-building mindset. Most companies are time tellers. They depend on one gifted leader who knows the time, who has the vision. When that leader leaves, so does the vision. Clock builders, however, create the mechanism itself. They build a culture that keeps ticking long after they're gone. Take Hewlett-Packard again. Dale Hewlett and Dave Packard didn't just run the company, they built the HP way. It wasn't a slogan. It was a way of life that valued trust, innovation, and respect. Every employee understood it. Founders could step away, and the clock would keep running. That's the mark of a visionary company. Another powerful insight from Built to Last is that these companies didn't start with grand, world-changing visions. They started small, often humble, but they had one trait in common: they tried things. They experimented relentlessly. They called it shooting bullets before cannonballs. They tested ideas, learned, failed, refined, and built momentum. Over time, their consistent experimentation created massive breakthroughs. Look at 3M. Its founders began with a failed mining business. They didn't set out to create post-it notes or scotch tape. They simply encouraged curiosity. Employees were allowed to spend 15% of their time on personal projects. That culture of freedom produced invention after invention. Visionary companies act first, then clarify their vision through doing. Collins warns about the myth of the great idea. Many people believe successful companies start with one big concept, but the research said otherwise. Most visionary companies didn't start with a brilliant product. They started with a brilliant philosophy. The products changed, the philosophy stayed. These companies also rejected the false choice between profits and purpose. They didn't say, we must choose between doing good or doing well. They said, we'll do both. They viewed profit as oxygen it was necessary to live, but not the purpose of life. Procter & Gamble wanted to improve the lives of consumers. Johnson & Johnson pledged to care for doctors, nurses, and mothers before shareholders. Ironically, these purpose-driven companies ended up making far more money over the long run. Built to Last also uncovers another myth that you need to be a young, bold startup to innovate. Many visionary companies were decades old when they made their biggest leaps. They believed in what Collins calls cult-like cultures. Not cults of personality, but cults of shared purpose. They hired people who believed in their values deeply. If you didn't fit the culture, you didn't stay. That intensity kept the flame alive. At IBM, Thomas Watson Sr. instilled the belief that respect for the individual and the pursuit of excellence mattered as much as profit. Those values were repeated in meetings, printed in manuals, lived in decisions. Employees weren't told to follow rules. They were invited to live by principles. The result was not obedience, but alignment, a unified sense of identity. Another pattern emerged. These companies set big, hairy, audacious goals, or BHAGs. These were not safe targets. They were near impossible challenges that stretched their people's imagination. Boeing's goal in the 1950s was to build the world's first commercial jet airliner. It was a massive risk, but it pushed them to greatness. A company, they give everyone a shared sense of adventure. Yet these companies didn't confuse a goal with their purpose. A bog is a mountain you climb. Purpose is why you climb. Purpose remains when the goal is achieved. Perhaps the most fascinating discovery from the research is that visionary companies rarely depended on one defining moment. There was no overnight success, no sudden breakthrough. Instead, there was a steady, relentless march. They built momentum like a flywheel, slowly, patiently, with thousands of small, consistent turns. Every policy, every hire, every decision added energy. Over years, the flywheel spun faster until success seemed unstoppable. Contrast this with companies that chase shortcuts. They look for the next miracle product or the next savior CEO. They run in bursts, not in rhythm. They burn bright and die young. The visionary ones, on the other hand, don't sprint, they endure. When you look back, you see that Built to Last isn't about corporations at all. It's about how to build anything that lasts. A company, a project, a movement, even a life. It's about designing something so deeply rooted in purpose that it can adapt to any change. The book forces you to ask, what is your core ideology? What do you believe in so strongly that you would never compromise it? What is the bog that will push you to the edge of your potential? And are you building a clock or just telling the time? Every generation faces the same temptation to focus on the urgent and neglect the timeless. Visionary builders resist that. They work not just for today, but for decades beyond their sight. They build foundations, not facades. Think of companies like Nike, Apple, or Patagonia. Each embodies this principle. Nike's core is not shoes. It's inspiration for athletes. Apple's core is not technology. It's creativity and empowerment. Patagonia's core is not clothing. It's environmental responsibility. The products evolve, but the heart remains. That's the challenge for every builder, to hold the core and embrace the unknown, to preserve what must never change, and to destroy everything else that limits growth. Collins and Porras end their journey with a simple truth. Visionary companies are never finished. They are always becoming. They live in a state of creative tension between what is and what could be. They keep asking, how can we do better? How can we serve deeper? How can we stay true? They don't wait for the future. They build it. So the real question is, what are you building? A company that depends on your presence, or a system that will outlast you? A short-lived success, or a living organism with a soul and purpose? If you disappear tomorrow, will your creation still move forward with clarity and strength? Or will it fade without your hand to guide it? Built to Last leaves you with that haunting challenge. It's a kind of challenge that echoes long after the book ends. Because in the end, greatness is not about having the best idea or the boldest dream. It's about endurance. It's about aligning values with action, purpose with progress, and culture with courage. To build something that lasts, you must decide what never changes in, then let everything else evolve. That's how legacies are made. That's how you build forever. If this story spoke to you, don't just close the video. Ask yourself today what you are building that will stand the test of time. What systems, beliefs, or values will continue when you're gone? Begin there, because anyone can build for success, but only a few dare to build to last.